one of the things that pissed me off with her case was she told me, she's like, I don't remember what my life was like. Like, I don't remember having a childhood. My memory goes back to about 12 when I started doing meth, and I've got nothing past that. I thought, well, man, what a shitty way to treat somebody. Like, you've basically stolen their childhood.
Okay, so just for some context, the reason why I want to review this interview of a retired child abuse detective is because I've recently put together some training for the police, which I'll be delivering for the first time in a couple of weeks. I'm very excited about that. And I have a tremendous respect for those that work within these crimes of children being sexually abused or abused in any way, in fact, and have to deal with that work day in, day out for their day job. I mean, I personally don't think I'd be able to do it. You have to be a very strong character, and I want to understand a little bit more about what they see and what they do. So I'm going to review this interview from Soft White Underbelly's YouTube channel. Go check that YouTube channel out. Mark over there, who owns it, is doing phenomenal work interviewing interesting people. Let's see what Jason, the retired child abuse detective, has to say about the work that he was involved in.
Jason, you work in law enforcement?
I did.
You did?
I did.
How many years?
I did almost 22.
22 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you worked in a field that was basically specializing in tell me about what you did.
Yeah, so I the majority of my career was in I love patrol work. You know, I got into law enforcement because I like being outside, working with my hands, not sitting at a desk. And so I was a patrol officer or supervisor for about 15 years, worked nights most of that, and had gotten myself in the best shape of my life. Decided I wanted to try out for a SWAT supervisor position. I always thought like that would be the pinnacle of my career, you know, being on a tactical team. Didn't get it, wasn't upset about that. What I did get was a torn labrum, so I had my shoulder done twice, and I kind of said to myself, like, man, you know, everybody's staying 18 years old, but I'm getting older, so I need to do something different. So anyway, in 2014, they had the Crimes Against Children Unit supervisor position come open. And my joke is I put in for that. My department was so impressed with my abilities that they gave it to me, but I was also the only one that applied. So
just something that I have been thinking about is these child abuse investigation teams. I wonder how it works behind the scenes. Do they put the job vacancy up maybe internally or externally? And do they get lots of applicants? Or are people encouraged to come in and work within that department? Do people just say, I don't want anything to do with that? I suppose they can't push people to come and work in that department because they don't know people's histories and how that could be triggering for them in some way. So you need the right officer who's going to be able to do that job, but you can't force people to do it. But I'm pretty sure people don't want to go into that department like they may want to go into other departments. Really interesting.
I got that position in 2014, and they gave me the keys to the machine, and like, it's just like, good luck, you know. I started, they had just gotten their 4th detective, so I had 4 detectives, and when I started, I was 6 when I retired. But I had no clue, like, what the hell I was doing. You know, I in my career as a cop, I thought I had figured everything out. Like in 15 years, I thought I understood the world, and I thought I knew how things went. And what I learned very quickly just from working that position is like I was an idiot. Wow. I had no idea there's so much more to the world. And yeah, so I did that for like 9 years.
What kind of cases were you covering?
Physical abuse and sexual abuse of children. So mostly sexual abuse. I'd say about 75% of our caseload was sexual, and then physical abuse. And then I worked out of a children's advocacy center, which is wonderful. We were a real high functioning one, which was wonderful. But you know, I had 4 detectives when I started. We had an annual caseload of like 2,500 cases.
Wow.
You know, and they're all important. So it was unmanageable. And so as a supervisor, like I didn't have to work cases, but I had to work cases because I had to. So I tried to work the stuff that was either like there wasn't a time crunch on, so I tried to work like cold cases or old cases. Let the detectives have stuff where kids were like actively being abused, but I worked a whole bunch of stuff.
You know, something that I think we should always consider when it comes to the police dealing with all the cases that they've got on their table. And this is a common theme that I hear all the time, which is the police force have more cases of sexual abuse to children than they can handle, than they have resources for, than they have funding for. So there's so many delays in investigations. There's so much inaccuracies happening, or not inaccuracies, but the police are stretched and they wish that they had more people on the job, more money to spend, more resources to use, because they've got more cases coming in that they can handle. So my point is, not that maybe we should be a bit more lenient, because that's not the answer, but maybe we should have an appreciation that they're working as hard as they can. And yes, there are always going to be bad officers, but there's always going to be bad workers in every industry. And unfortunately, those are the officers that make the news headlines, and the good ones who are doing their job as to the best of their ability don't make the media outlet, mainstream media. And so we focus on what's not happening rather than what's happening.
Just kind of learned by doing. So,
What kind of things did you learn?
the biggest thing is that I didn't understand, like what I thought I understand, I don't. Like the world seems so simple, and I think part of our problem is that, especially in any sort of professional capacity that deals with people like not in their good times, right? Doctors, EMTs, cops. Like we like to compartmentalize and say that like you're either good or you're bad. And I ran into somebody one time that said this. I wish I could remember who it was, but they said, everybody thinks it's black and white, and the problem is that we all live in the gray somehow. And anyway, I say all that to say I work those colder, older cases, so I usually talk to like older teenagers or adults who were reporting things that happened to them as kids. And so that taught me a lot, because I talked to people who maybe they never reported, and there's no statute in Texas. So they said, man, I'm going to come in and report. And I would find out how this impacted them in so many different ways. Like I had one of the first cases I worked, I had I gotta be careful too, because like some I don't want to say things that are gonna identify people.
No, we're not going to do that.
But like one of the first cases I worked, I had this gal. I think she was like 19 or 20. Her mom and her stepdad they're getting divorced, and she came in and wanted to report something that happened to her when she was much younger, like preteen younger. And she had actually outcried when she was a kiddo. And the detective that had originally investigated the case did a really good job, but back then if the kid came in and recanted, they just shelved it. And so that's what happened. So I pulled it back out. All right, help me understand. I said, here's the deal. You lied, right? You either lied about it happening or you lied about it not happening. I believe you when you say that you lied about it not happening, but help me explain to other people why. And like I'll never forget what she said. She's like, I was going to interview with that detective again, and I walked into the bedroom and my mom was crying in the mirror, because ever since I said what was happening, like everything fell apart. She said, my mom hated me, my brothers hated me, my school counselor hated me. And she said, so I went into that interview with the detective and I just said I lied.
Wow.
And it didn't happen.
Is that surprising to you? Because it's not to me. It's sad to hear it. That's why I remark with wow, because it's still always going to be astonishing when you hear real stories like that. But when you think about a teenager and they talk about something that happened to them, I can't remember the detail. Was it the stepfather that did something? I can't remember. But it breaks the whole family down. And now, if it was the stepfather, I'm not going to rewind the video to double check, but let's say it was the stepfather, and now you've broken up your mother and her partner's relationship. Your mother is going to be sad, angry, frustrated, shocked, surprised, all of those emotions, and you see the family start splitting apart. No wonder teenagers don't come forward. No wonder children would never come forward about a family member who's harmed them in any way. Like, but I get the impression as I speak to different audiences, adult audiences, that we're under the impression that, you know, my daughter, my son, my nephew, my niece, they'd just come forward if something happened to them. They definitely would come forward. It's so complicated, and I think we forget what it is to be a child, or what it is to be a teenager, and the way that they view the world. And that's a lot about what my training to these adults are, especially teachers, social workers, and now, as I mentioned at the start of this, the police. So I just wanted to say that.
And she said, everything went back to normal, and he never touched me again. And so for me, that was a big learning point of like, wow, we don't think about stuff like that. But, okay, so the other cool part about working child abuse is it's really nerdy. Like there's no other form of crime where there's so much science and research behind it. Okay, so kids make outcry, like kids recant. That's normal,
These cases are sexual abuse from a relative or friend, or they're sex trafficking, or what kind of stuff?
Man, I worked all of that. Most sexual assaults, like I know through statistics and the research, and also through my anecdotal experience working them, is that most sexual assaults are by somebody that the person knows.
Yeah.
Especially with kids.
Yeah.
You bring up trafficking. Like with trafficking, most of the time, the person that either recruits or exploits the person is somebody they know. Like it's so super common. But yeah, it's just I learned so much about people's lives. Like when you interview somebody about one of these cases, you have to sit down and man, it feels like what you do. Just tell me about your life. Tell me about where you grew up. Tell me about who lives in your house. What do you like to do? And you learn so much about people. And what I learned is that there's not like a switch. There's not an on-off that people just all of a sudden decide, oh, well, I'm gonna be bad. I'm gonna go out and get hooked on methamphetamine, or I'm gonna go out and start doing things. A lot of times, bad things happen because of a variety of reasons, and the solutions to those aren't so simple. So,
I feel like he's just giving me the impression that he's very detached. Currently, he's given me the impression that he's managed to detach himself emotionally to the cases. That may change as he talks more, because if you're listening to this in your headphones only, he seems very not neutral, but not emotionless either. Because I'm not trying to talk about a negative trait. He seems to have been able to handle these stories very well. And maybe that's because you just build a thick skin through investigating these cases for, 9 years, he said? Because could you imagine interviewing and investigating a case around, let's say, a 9-year-old who had been sexually abused for 2 years by someone in the family? And you're interviewing that young girl or boy, and you're potentially seeing the harm that has caused to them, or even just the discomfort and sadness that they feel as they're being interviewed. And you need to really dig deep to try to gather the correct evidence to get a successful prosecution. just to see a child explain what happened to them, even if at the time they're explaining it and giving their statement, let's say they're very young, they're a 7, 8-year-old, and they don't recognize it as being harmful in some way, which I believe if I was interviewed, I'm just trying to think, if I was interviewed at 8 years old, when all of that was happening to me, if it got caught, if somebody found out it was happening and the police were interviewing me, would I have felt like sad and upset that it had happened to me? That man was doing all of those things? I'm not sure at that age I would have. I think I would have felt more worried about my dad getting in trouble for trusting that man to come into our house. I also would have felt worried about what's going to happen to our family home. I also would have been probably pretty terrified that I was in a police station and I have officers all around me in uniforms. Maybe they're not in uniforms when they do that process with children, but I think me feeling sad about what the man was doing to me would have probably been last on my list. It's weird, isn't it? Although when I was giving my statement, when I tried to prosecute this man when I was 30 years old, I was feeling sad that 8-year-old Jeremy had been exploited and taken advantage of and used for this man's perverse sexual fantasy. So it was a completely different place, of course. Me at 8 years old to me at 30 years old is completely different. I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but I initially said about me feeling like he's managed to build a thick skin through doing this work and seeing so many cases. But it goes back to my point of why I feel so motivated to shout out the police officers that do this work, because they must feel like the media are constantly hammering them for their failures and never praising them or congratulating them on their successes. And to try to not make this point too long, I also just want to say to anybody that's watching or listening who has had a terrible experience with the police, I'm sorry if by me trying to, or my approach being positive towards the police is insensitive. I don't want that to make you not feel seen or heard, or give the impression that we shouldn't still be trying to improve the police, because of course they have their flaws. Yeah.
Are there any solutions that came to your mind when working on all these cases?
I think, well, from a strictly law enforcement perspective, or just holistically?
Holistically.
Like holistically, just be decent. Yeah. But I mean, that sounds simple, right?
I wish we could all just do that.
But it's not. But just be decent. From a law enforcement perspective, it's different. I'm not trying to bash any profession, especially the one that I was a part of, but most people don't want to believe about all this bad stuff that goes on in the world, right? I mean, I don't want to believe that there are people that are homeless. I don't want to believe that there are people who are in these horrible situations. I don't want to believe that there are kids that are getting abused. I don't want to believe that there are people that will take a teenage girl and turn her out and sex traffic her and make money off of that. And the ways that people exploit another human being are usually through vulnerabilities, right? So like drug use, mental illness, poverty. Those are complex problems. They don't happen overnight. And so the solutions are not simple. So as a human being, it's always easier for us to just say, well, I don't believe it. I don't believe that stuff happens. I don't believe what you're saying to me. I don't, because we don't want to. And, so like for my profession, I mean, it's always easier to just say, I don't believe it. And then if you do that, you have to go out and you still want to be productive. So what do? We create problems that we know how to deal with, that are fun, that are things that we might want to do. And so I'm not trying to be critical, but like that was the biggest eye opener for me, was like I thought I knew what I was doing and I thought I was solving problems. And in reality, I don't think I was solving anything, you know? And now I've got these people in front of me that I say, man, this is a real problem. But I don't have the first clue what to do with it. And I can't do everything you need, you know? And so that was a learning curve for me, was being able to say, I don't know. I don't know what the next step is. I'll help you figure it out. I'll try and be part of the solution and not the problem. I'm going to talk to all the other people that I know that are good people and see how we can figure this out. Sometimes that worked out. A lot of times it didn't, you know.
Oh, I wonder if he also, in investigating these cases, had to question or interview the offender as well. And I wonder whether he's going to speak about that in this video. I hope so.
But
Were there common denominators in all these cases?
yes and no. Sexual abuse, not so much. I think drugs are a big one, either from the parents or from the kids. Physical abuse, yes, right? Like we worked a lot of abusive head traumas. People would take babies, they'd shake them or they'd beat them or they'd injure them, and they'd end up having serious neurological problems because, you know, you can hurt a little baby in a way that you can't hurt an adult. I don't think any of them were just terrible people. I don't think, with the majority of those, I don't think woke up that day and said, man, I'm going to go injure this kiddo in a way that's going to put them in a wheelchair for the rest of their life.
How do you ever build a thick enough skin to be able to deal with investigating a case of babies being shaken so severely that they end up with head traumas and disabled for the rest of their lives? I mean, how, after you've dealt with a case like that on a particular day, how do you clock off from work at 5 p.m. and go back to your normal life without thinking about that 24/7? That's why I've got praise for people that do this job.
But it happens, you know. Physical abuse, I think a lot of people get frustrated. You know, they don't really give you a book when you leave the hospital with that baby and say, here's how to be a good parent. And so I think a lot of the physical abuse, you know, some people were just nasty, but a lot of it was just people trying to cope and trying to deal. Sexual abuse is different. I think everybody knows that that's wrong, you know, and that was another interesting thing, teaching me how to interview people. You cannot interview somebody and expect them to help you and say, well, hey, tell me why you're such a disgusting human being, terrible person. Like, you have to leave everybody in out. Yeah, so doing that, like interviewing perpetrators, I learned that most of them they'd been victims. A lot of the times they had drug problems, they had lousy childhoods. It doesn't excuse it, but I mean, you have to have some sort of empathy and compassion and understand that, like, the problems aren't super easy, you know.
Okay, so he spoke about offenders and interviewing offenders, and in summary, a lot of them come from troubled backgrounds. And the thing is, when we say that, people feel like it's suggesting that we should have some empathy for the crime they committed. I don't think that's what we're looking for. We're looking to have some understanding as to why they could have committed the crime. And for those that say, I don't care, they're evil monsters, lock them up and throw away the key, that's not solving anything. First of all, that's reactive, not preventative. And we need to understand why these crimes are being committed by certain people, and that will give us the key to try to work with others who have those same vulnerabilities, and hopefully when working with them, they won't go out and commit the crime ever for the whole of their lives, and then you don't have victims. I am always very upset when people talk about sex offenders and paedophiles being victims of child abuse themselves. I see when I speak to people who don't work within this field but just general people that I meet in life, it's often a go-to response when talking about sex offenders or paedophiles. And I feel like that go-to is not correct, because I feel like if you were to be able to do a study on victims of sexual abuse in their childhood, the majority of them don't turn into perpetrators or offenders. It's just maybe there is a correlation between those who offend to those who have been offended against, yet, but that doesn't mean everyone that's been sexually abused as a child is going to turn into an offender. That would just be madness. And imagine what kind of message that's sending out to the young boy who's 11 years old that has now spoken up about what happened, and the fear that puts inside his head that he may turn into one of these monsters that he sees on the news. It's not good. And imagine if that's the narrative that we're feeding everybody, and then for the parents of that same son, that boy that we're talking about in this example, who has been sexually abused, they're now worried that their son will turn into a sex offender. It's just, we just need proper studies. That's what we actually need. We need proper research and proper studies. And I don't know if they're out there or not. I suspect that they're not, because nobody wants to research or study this, and there's no funding for it. But if there are people out there researching and studying these types of things, I would love to bring them onto this podcast, and they can help us understand more and bring this information to us. That would be very useful.
There are cases that stood out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you share a story or two without identifying anybody?
I can talk about one that was a success, because the survivor in that case is actually, like, we've actually given her case study, but I'm not going to name her, but so I met her when she was 17, which in Texas is technically considered an adult. That's the age of consent in Texas.
Is that right?
Yeah.
17.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I've just got to stop it before he starts the story. Age of consent is a very funny thing, isn't it? Because in different countries, it's different, and in different states in America, I'm assuming, because he said in Texas it's 17. I'm pretty sure in other places it's 18. It changes. So here in England, it's 16. So if you were to have sexual relations with a 17-year-old as an adult, it's legal. But then if you go over to America, it's illegal and you're a sex offender. Surely we should just have a standardization across the globe, because all human beings are the same. The thing should just be the same, shouldn't it? Like, why is it different? And I don't know what about other countries. I have seen that I've heard in some it's as low as 14, maybe even 12. Somebody once sent me a video of. But yeah, it's just so weird we haven't standardized that, isn't it? There should be no reason for it to be different, unless I'm wrong in that, and there is a reason why it should be different. And if that's the case, please do comment on this podcast so that we can all learn more together. That's the idea of it.
She came in and reported, the report came through from a patrol officer that her basically cousin had been having sex with her and giving her methamphetamine from when she was like 12 years old.
Wow.
And I ended up working that. I learned a lot from her. Her and several others that I'd been working at the time, but her. So like I interviewed her, she's a hot mess. I'm pretty sure I think she was sober the first time I interviewed her. But, you know, she came in and it was tough to say, like, I don't care. I don't care that you're an addict. I don't care that your life is all messed up. I'm more focused on what the people did to you. But, like, you know, her abuser had started giving her methamphetamine when she was like 12, 13. I mean, I started smoking cigarettes when I was 12, 13. I still use tobacco, you know. Like, I can't imagine how hard it is to quit a drug as powerful as meth. So I'm not going to try and pretend to do it. So anyway, one of the things that stuck out about her case is like whenever I would interview teenagers or kids, I would always ask them the questions that you ask any kid, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, tell me about your favorite things in school. What was life like before all this stuff started happening? And one of the things that pissed me off with her case was she told me, she's like, I don't remember what my life was like. Like, I don't remember having a childhood. My memory goes back to about 12 when I started doing meth, and I've got nothing past that. I thought, well, man, what a shitty way to treat somebody. Like, you've basically stolen their childhood. Wow. So, anyway, yeah, with her case, I worked the hell out of that, and we identified another perpetrator who was, and some other victims, and so, like, in a very direct way, that teenager, for having the courage to come forward and report, ended up saving other kids. So we made a bunch of arrests on that case, and then I just got mad about it, and wanted to make sure that like, not mad personally at the people, but just mad, like, man, I want to make sure that this case actually goes through. And I was real concerned that the victim, the primary victim in that case, was just, I thought she was going to die. I didn't think she was going to live. She was just so bad on methamphetamine. Every time I saw her, she was worse. And after we had sent the case off for prosecution, which is typically the end of it for me, I was like, man, if she dies, they're never going to get prosecuted for what they did to her and other people. So I would try to meet with her like once a month. And man, it was just funny. Like, half the time she'd show up late, she'd show up high, you know. I was able to connect her with some advocacy resources that gave her opportunities at sobriety that she'd never take. And it felt like turned into a dad mode of just being like, you just got to try, you know. Like, I think you can do it, just try.
How could you ever leave the cases alone? I just couldn't. It would just take over my life. It would just take over my life, dealing with young people on a one-to-one basis and trying your best to encourage them out of the situation that they're now in, with this drug addiction, and dealing with the trauma of what happened to them throughout their childhood, from 12 years old to 17 years old. And he mentioned a really good point. He explained and brilliantly was honest about the fact that he can't relate to someone who's addicted to a drug like that, because he has never been addicted to a drug like that. And the reason why I think that's an interesting point is we've got police officers who have not been through sexual abuse in their childhood themselves, trying to relate to victims who have been through sexual abuse in their childhood. And I think if we looked at that, there's a pros and cons to that situation. One, they can keep distance from the actual crime and not get too emotionally involved. But also, of course, the con of that, the disadvantage of that is they can't relate to it on a deeper level because they have never been through it themselves. But that's what I feel. And this is one of the reasons why, as I mentioned at the start of this video, I wanted to do this and review this, is because I want to see what I should make sure is in the training that I'm going to deliver in a couple of weeks, which is actually what I've already done, which is trying to give the officers that I'm going to be speaking to a real relatable way of understanding what it can be like to go through something like this, and then they can deal with the people in their cases more effectively. And that's essentially what we want.
And she ended up finding sobriety on her own, and we still talk today. And I'm just, you know, to me, like, I didn't realize that when I started law enforcement, but that's like one of the biggest successes. How many nights was I out there sweating my butt off, or in the rain, or digging through somebody's nasty car to find drugs, or, you know, whatever. And nobody's ever going to say thank you for that, you know. But I've got one human being that I can say, man, I had some part in her still being alive today, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for that. And I think if more people took a passion in it, then maybe we'd have more successes. So.
Sure. And did you feel like you made a real dent in the situation?
No. In that situation, maybe, yeah. But like, as a whole, like, are you going to make a dent? No. No, like, people just treat each other like shit, right? I mean, that, you know that. And like, that was an eye opener for me.
Oh, the problem is us saying what he's just said there with, I can't even make a dent in the situation, that for me makes us feel hopeless, and I don't really like it. Someone once said to me, Jeremy, all the work you're doing is fantastic, but there's just so much out there that I don't think it will ever be stopped. And maybe that is the case, but again, I think that's, in fact, I surely got to say that's the wrong way of thinking, because that attitude means we won't take action, and we have to believe that the impossible is possible, meaning that no children and teenagers will ever be harmed again, because actually they're relying on us. And I say this all the time, especially when I'm doing my talks, says the children and teenagers are relying on us to sort this situation out for them so that they can have a safe and playful childhood, which is their right, and we should be protecting their right. It's our responsibility to protect their right, and that's why we should aim for 0 victims and not spend time thinking that this is impossible and we can't actually do anything about this because the scale of it is too much. That's just my thoughts.
Like, I could just sit in my office and play solitaire and do nothing, and kids are going to get abused. I could go out there and arrest everybody that abuses a kid, and kids are going to get abused. Like, it is, I love it when people say, they're like, oh, well, it's so much worse now. No, it's not. No, it's not. We just have the internet to tell us when it happens. You know, but when we were kids, I mean, you knew that you don't go by that guy's house, or, you know, you don't talk to that person. So no, you're not going to change it. It's the same with drugs, you know, like, I don't think you're going to, if you go out there and arrest everybody who's got drugs, like, man, you're not going to stop drugs. People are going to do them. So anyway, that's for me.
Just before he continues, I still don't like it. I don't like that, and I don't want it to be that way. I don't want us to talk about it in that way.
Just like the mentality of, okay, if I've only got so much life, if I've only got so much energy, if I've only got so much resources, let me try and devote it to something that, and maybe I'll make a difference in one person's life. One person, you know, that's all you need to do. But most of the time you're going to fail. Most of the time you're going to fail no matter what you do. So try and do the thing that has the most potential for impacting somebody. So
it's not just a drug problem, it's a mental health problem that gets complicated with the drugs.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like where I live at. Like, we've got a guy that's schizophrenic. And I mean, I don't know directly, but I'm gonna guess he's pretty untreated, right? You know, he's always walking around. He drinks a lot.
Probably self-medicating with whatever.
Yeah, he's self-medicating. And I you know, when I talk to other people, they're like, well, he's always drunk, you know, or he's just a problem. And I'm like, man, if I can't imagine what's going on in that man's head, you know? Like, if that was going on with me, I'd be drunk all the time too. You know, so if somebody was hurting me and abusing me, like, it's not crazy to think that, man, you're going to try and cope with that in some way, and not everybody has resources to do those effectively. So
Resources or the correct teaching? So is it in every situation that somebody's not being able to cope with what happened in their childhood, is it all about resource, or is it about what they've been taught and what they've been shown by others? Meaning, have they been inspired by other people who have been through similar things to what they've been through and have still made a enjoyable, fruitful, peaceful, successful life? Were they shown that as children and teenagers? I'm even talking about before any harm was done to them. Did they have the idea that actually anything is possible for them? And were they shown that? Or is it all about resources after the fact of the situation, the incident, and when they get to adults and they can't cope with the memories? You see where I'm trying to go with that?
there's a lot less good people in the world than we think. You know?
That's a shame.
I don't know if what I just said was just too simplistic and too black and white. I just quickly thought if what I said there was correct, but I hope you understand what I was trying to get at.
It is. But that's what I go back to. That's what your original question, right? Like, just be decent. It costs nothing to be decent.
Your conscience is a lot clearer.
Maybe. I don't know.
Your karma's better.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I'll figure it out in the end. But, it's like the case I was telling you about before we came in here. Like, you want me to go back on that one? And
Sure. Yeah, let's hear it again.
Yeah. So, like, this was right before I retired. I worked the streets for 15 years, Mark. So, like, once I got off of them, I was happy to be in an office. It's air conditioned, it's heated. I didn't have a window, so I didn't know if it was raining or clear outside. But anyway, so I didn't run out. I didn't try to run out. But I got a call that they wanted us to do an interview of a kid in an emergency, and there was this mom had gone down to one of our parks and reported that her 2-year-old went missing when she was in the bathroom. And like in this way, I thought, man, this is an amazing response by everybody in emergency services, because I got down there, I didn't realize they'd been out there for like 4 hours, and they had done everything to try and find this little boy. Like, they had dogs out, they had drugged the river, they had anybody with a badge or a car or a radio was out there looking for this kid. And after that long, it's like, okay, something doesn't add up. I just kind of started digging and just listening, and it was clear that she was lying. And she had been interviewing with DFPS, and the family found out, like, they figured out that she was lying about something, and they turned on her. And I just told her, I said, hey, like, you want to go back to my office and talk? And so took her back to my office and talked to her, I think, that night for about 4 hours. And I knew she was lying. There's no other alternative than that boy is dead. Like, I didn't know that for sure at that point, but I knew it. And but at the same time too, I don't know, let me find out about you. And in the time I talked to her, like, I learned that this woman had a shitty life, like really bad. She'd been the victim of some terrible things. What did that lead to? That led to a meth addiction. What did the meth addiction lead to? That led to prison, And then issues came up when she got out of prison. But we talked for like 4 hours that night, and I told her, I said, I know you're lying, and I know you want to do the right thing. I think you're at heart a good person. So I haven't treated you bad. I haven't treated you like shit. Like, when you want to tell me the truth, here's my number. Call me. I will not treat you like garbage. And I went home, got a couple hours sleep. My phone had been ringing off the hook. The next morning, it was maybe like 8 o'clock. Her brother called me screaming. He's like, she confessed. You need to get down here. And it's the only time I ever ran license sirens in my detective car. And because I wanted to get there before they told me that she was going to try and leave. And I got there and I said, hey, what's going on? She said, I had to tell my family first. Okay, I respect that, I said, does that mean that he's dead? She said, yeah. I said, all right. And the family had torn off in the car, and I said, where are they going? She said, they're going to find him. I said, they know where he's at? She said, not really. I said, well, then you need to take me to him before they find him, And it was surreal, man. I loaded her up in the car, called one of my guys, told him where we were going to meet us over there, and she took me to a dumpster behind a church. It was 8 o'clock in the morning-ish. Nobody's out and about. And I'll never forget it. But she's like, he's in there. Wow. And we're pulling trash bags out. And she's screaming in the car. She's like, you gotta, I don't want to be here. You gotta move me. I don't want to see this. You gotta move me. And I don't, to this day, I don't know why I did, but I got in the car and I moved it forward because I was like, she doesn't need to see this. She put him in there. I don't know why.
I can just about deal with stories like that. Just about. And trying to think about why that kind of story hits me so hard. I think it's because I struggle where adults are so out of control. All of their behaviour results in children suffering. Now, of course, this is an extreme case of death by the baby, by the toddler. But I see it so often on various levels where adults can't organise themselves, they can't behave properly, they can't sort their own baggage out, and it often leads to their behaviour trickling down to their children, and their children suffering through no fault of their own. And I think that's the bit that really hits me.
I was like, she didn't need to see this. So anyway, we pulled out all the bags, and then we started just tearing them open. One trash is all trash. And then I grabbed one bag, and like, I didn't recognize it then. I know now, but like, as soon as I put my hands on that bag, I knew there was a dead little boy inside. But I start tearing, and I think I went through 6 bags. I think the autopsy, the ME's report came back that he had been in 12. And I stopped at like 6, and it was like, I know what's in here. You know, I'm like, I don't need to see anymore. I don't want to damage anything, but I know what's in here. And I will never forget that feeling of like, I put my hand on that little boy's head, and I was just overcome, because like, if you've been a parent, you know that feeling of when you tuck your kids in, or when you hold them, or when you hug them, and like just how your whole hand fits around the back of their head. And in that moment, like, I felt my kiddos.
Wow.
And it messed me up big time. And yeah, a million people show up, and I ended up taking her back to the office and interviewing her with another detective for like another 3 hours. And I mean, she basically confessed. Like, not many people in these types of crimes confess. They give admissions. There's a difference between an admission and a confession. Very few people are going to come out and say, yeah, I did this horrible thing, but they'll say, yeah, I did. There's no way that I couldn't have done it, you know? So anyway, it was a mess. Took her to jail, and the phones were ringing off the hook, and not one of my favorite memories.
Yeah, that's a horrible story.
I think part of the problem too is like, they're in emergency services, like we create victimization, right? Because like, and I'm not trying to be jaded, but man, like I teach cops now. I associate with cops. I'm on all the social media groups, you know, and I see so many people that are like, well, people don't understand what it's like. They don't see their dead babies, you know? And I'm like, I did nothing but child abuse for 9 years. I pulled one dead kid out of a dumpster. It fucked me up. Like, big time. I don't think that most of these people are experiencing that stuff, but they're, for whatever reason, putting all of that victimization on themselves when you don't have to. Like, just be glad. Just be glad that you're not in the situation that person is.
I wonder what support police officers get through this job. I mean, there must be. You take this situation of finding the child in the trash and they're dead. You think of dealing with families and children where toddlers and young children have been raped, for example, dealing with young teenagers who have been horrifically exploited. It's I believe there's something called secondary trauma, where you take on that person's traumatic view on what happened to them, and you actually take that on as your own. And I'd love if anybody actually knows the science behind that to write that in the comments. I encourage people to write in the comments all the time, because that's where I want the discussion to begin, because I certainly don't have all the answers. I only have a few of my thoughts and opinions, which I'm giving you here, and I would love it if people added theirs as well, so that we can learn from each other. I want this to be a community vibe where we're all interested in understanding more. And I wonder what support there is for these police officers, and how they are looked after, and are they regularly checked in on? What happens if something affects an officer in quite a significant way? Are they allowed to, do they get a break from that role and put into another one for a certain amount of time? Is there counselling services? I wonder what goes on in a child abuse investigation department. Maybe that's something I'll ask the officers when I speak with them, because all I hear is funding constantly being cut for these services. So I can't imagine they've got money to splash around bringing on a full-time counsellor for any officers that feel sad one day. You know what I mean?
So,
Did you develop compassion fatigue or anything like that? Seeing so much trauma?
I want to say yes, but I don't think, not with that type of casework. I developed compassion fatigue for the adults, who you try and help, and they, oh, no, I don't want help.
Yeah, you see that a lot too.
And it's like, I'm not saying that's right, but that's the problem with I think for people that work like with persons crimes, work with people, is like you need to set yourself an exit, because the people that do these types of jobs, they do it because they're good people. Like I think most cops, most EMTs, most firefighters, like they're good people, but they get so jaded at the fact that our system is broken and there's very little that they can actually do to help. And so they put up this wall, like for me, holding that little boy's head, what I was so filled with emotion about was like, there were so many different levels that should have intervened, and that should have never happened with him. And every system that was meant to make sure that this little boy didn't get beaten to death and put in a dumpster failed. And
okay, but hang on just for a second. Should all the focus be, like, if you take the journey of that mother and her son leading to his murder, I feel a slight issue with just placing the blame on all the services that could have intervened, even though I also agree that we have to look at that and see where things can be improved, so that services will notice things at an earlier state and at an earlier stage, so that it doesn't end up in the death of this 2-year-old. But shouldn't we go a bit more upstream, and start to think about, well, what are we doing with, how are we bringing children and teenagers up? I understand that some people aren't brought up. Somebody once said some people aren't brought up, they're dragged up. And yeah, okay, or they bring themselves up because there's no stable adult figures around them to bring them up. Okay, so there's all of those different situations. But as far as like the education system, the media, how are we helping people grow into humans, into adults that wouldn't get anywhere near causing harm to their own child in this way? So I feel, shouldn't we focus on where the services, the reactive services, should have noticed what was going on within that family, set up that mother-son relationship, or just even with the mother, and how we could have intervened. But how did that mother get to that position of doing something like that? Surely that's where a lot of the focus has got to be. But I also understand that is so much more complicated to sort out and address than just we should have intervened. At what point did we miss something? Let's check the paperwork. Let's see when social services were involved. Let's see who was on that case. Let's question them. I mean, that's just easier, isn't it? But yeah, I find that a bit frustrating.
Like, I felt guilty about that. But so anyway, to go back to your question, like, that's where I think you have to set an exit date. You cannot care about everybody. You should care about everybody that you can that's in front of you, and then you say, at this point, I'm going to stop. And I'm going to go do something else. Because otherwise you're putting all of this emotional baggage on you. And if you don't deal with it in an effective way, you're going to deal with it in a bad way. And not dealing with it is a bad way. For me, I had some friends that that advocated a lot for therapy. That story that I just told you about baby Frankie, like, I could not have talked about that without breaking out and crying a year ago. And it took some really good therapy to get me to change the way my brain thought, to where.
Okay, so I said at the start of this, he seems quite disassociated to the emotional troubles that dealing with cases like this bring you. I now am going to reword that or say it again. I think for this video, he is doing this very well and not getting emotionally drawn into the particular cases. But as he's just explained there, this job was hard for him. And it took its toll, and it was full of sadness and some of the highest levels of sadness at many times. But he's doing a great job of like summarizing it all. And I read the comments on this particular video, and a lot of people were requesting for a longer video for him to talk about more things that he saw and more things that he thinks on reflection of the 9-year career he had in the child abuse investigation team. So yeah, really good, really good.
I could share that. And I think if more people did that, like, that'd be super helpful. But not everybody has that option. So then what do? We go to drugs, we go to alcohol, we go to sex, we go to whatever.
Right. Jason, let me ask you one last question. What would you say is the most important thing you've learned after doing this kind of work?
I think very few people are born bad.
Oh, interesting.
I think we're all the product of our environment. We're all the product of our upbringing. We're all the product of our childhoods. And I think there's very few people out there that are just natural pieces of shit, I think
the drugs really rewire your brain and make things that seem evil. It makes it like something you can do with a clear conscience.
You have to be able to look at somebody and see some value in everyone.
Yeah. But if they weren't on drugs, they'd probably be more of a stand-up citizen.
Yeah. Yeah.
The drugs really change people.
I see it with your interviews, and it's what I saw when I was interviewing people. It's like, okay, you've done a horrible thing, or you've had horrible things happen to you, but you still have this story. You're still a person inside. And I think if there's one thing, like, just understand that, man, there is a decent human being probably inside almost everybody. And if you can find that, if you can take yourself to that person's level, meet them at their level, whatever that is for you, then you can look differently at the world.
Beautiful. All right, Jason Lundquist, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thanks.
I wish you lots of luck.
Thanks, man.
You're clear of all this trauma.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so really interesting question that he finished with there. Statement that he made saying that he doesn't believe people are born this way and they are a product of their environment and everything that's ever happened to them. That is a topic area that I tried to bring up on my social media a couple of months ago, or maybe last month it was, using some videos that I thought were quite clever. If you're not on my social media, please go over to there. And if you're using various social media apps, follow me on a number of them, because often social media will only show you a small percentage of what I post, especially with the subject area that I speak about. It was really good to review this interview, and I think it has, personally, what it's achieved for me is the purpose of what I'm going to do in 2 weeks' time when I deliver a half-day training to police is I want to help them understand what it is like to have gone through something like this in your childhood. And the reason is there will be many officers who have not been through something like this in their childhood, and they're dealing with people who have. They're also dealing with offenders, and they're dealing with the families of the children who have been abused. And if I can give them an insight and really take them on a journey that they can feel with their heart, not just their head, I think that's going to be useful for them as they deal with cases moving forward. I'm very excited. I'm also very nervous about it, because it's the first time I've delivered to the police, and I've never been a policeman, and I know nothing about their job role. To a certain extent, I know nothing. Of course, I tried to prosecute the man that did this to me, and therefore I understood what the process was, the police process was, with dealing with my case. But I'm looking forward to learning from them and seeing what they need. And I hope, as I post on social media about this training and me going to speak with the police for the first time, that this will create some momentum, and some other police forces will at least see what I'm doing. So if you are part of a police force, or you have any connections with police, please send them my website, jeremyindica.com, and we'll just keep moving. I wish I could do more of these reviews. When I find a good documentary, a good video, a good interview like this, I personally wish I was releasing a video a day, a podcast a day on YouTube and in audio format. But I mean, I'm so far from that, you can't believe it. I used to release one of these every 2 weeks. I'm now releasing one, trying my best to release one every month. I'm so snowed under trying to juggle so many different things, including, just constantly developing the presentations that I deliver to the different audiences. I can hardly find time to record this, edit it, create the correct promotional material for it, the social media post to promote it, and then post it. It's such a long process, but fingers crossed things will change. 2026 now coming up, and I hope that I can just at least continue this monthly momentum, and one day when you see the frequency increase, you'll know that things are really building, because I want to bring someone onto the team who can help me with this process, so I can make more of these, because I think they're very, very beneficial. They're beneficial for me. I learn a lot, and I hope you learn a lot too. I hope you found this interesting and has given you an insight into the police officers that do their very best with the cases that they have, with the limited resources that are pressured into. Thank you so much to all the police officers that work day in, day out, doing this very difficult job that many of us couldn't even think of doing. Thank you for that, and thank you for joining me on this podcast, and I'll see you again for the next one.